we have been trying to kind of tease apart what Kitsap Harvest is doing in terms of gleaning. And, gleaning from a farm looks very different than gleaning from a backyard fruit tree. And so we've kind of been trying to keep those separate. And so what we're going to be talking about today is really about fruit trees in particular. And maybe that'll mean, every once in a while we're gleaning some lettuce or we're gleaning some berries or something like that. But for the most part, it's those fruit trees that we're kind of focusing on with this program. So I just kind of wanted to make that clear. So the Fruit Tree Gleaning Committee, this group of people that I'm hoping will become our Gleaning Committee, the purpose of the committee is to plan, organize, anticipate, and motivate. And the bottom line is we're trying to pick a lot of fruit. And we're trying to pick a lot of fruit because there's a lot of fruit out there. I don't know if you guys have seen or noticed or experienced this yourselves, but there are a lot of trees that you see around Kitsap County that are just laden with fruit, and it's all falling to the ground and people don't know what to do with it. And so Kitsap Harvest is coming in saying, hey, we're going to organize volunteers to come get this fruit. Then we're going to bring it back to our warehouse. We're going to sort it, and then we're going to distribute it to people who have low access to fresh produce. And it's just such an amazing mission. And it really is taking so much wastefulness that is happening and changing that into a very positive thing that is literally changing people's lives. So I wanted to kind of go over what we've done in the past with gleaning. So in 2019, and Paisley, you can let me know if you want to add to this because I know you did gleaning before 2019. But I just pulled data from starting in 2019. So they gleaned a little bit over 15,000 pounds of fruit. In 2020, it was 6,000. 2021, it was 10,000. 2022, it was only 1,000, but that was not because of anybody's fault. It was because it was a really bad pollination year. And just having to do with the frosts and things, a lot of fruit did not actually ripen. And then last year, 2023, we gleaned 12,486 pounds. And I kind of just came up with this while putting this together. I was like, let's shoot for 20,000. We can do that. So maybe we can do that. So what is our goal for this year? I was trying to think about that. So actually here, I'm going to go back. Gleaning in the past has looked different than how I think maybe we need to try a different way of gleaning because of a variety of different things. But the way that gleaning has been in the past has been very effective. Like we clearly have got a lot of fruit. But there are things that are inefficient about it. And it was putting a lot of work on a couple of key volunteers, a couple of them board members who are already doing a lot. And to avoid burnout and to just get more people involved, we really wanted to try to create more of a plan this year that was more fleshed out. And so that is really what this Gleaning Committee is about. It's about creating this plan that when it comes time for fruit to be ready, we know what we're doing and we have it ready to go. And I will say, this plan that I've kind of come up with, it has been in collaboration with Paisley, with IRE, and with other gleaning organizations that we've talked to, and in particular, one that's in the Bay Area in California. They glean like so much fruit. And so we're kind of modeling it after that. And so my idea is that we're going to have two different types of gleans this coming season. And the first one I'm calling a cluster glean. And it would be planned for every Saturday from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. And it would be utilizing the Kitsap Harvest box truck, which you can see in this picture right here. And that's the box truck that we use to pick up food and to distribute food, but it's not being used on Saturdays. And so we have this really useful truck that can carry equipment and it can also carry fruit. And so the idea would be we'd be able to plan out each Saturday. We're having these gleans. We use the box truck and we glean at maybe around 3 sites within 5 miles of each other. And this would be like all the volunteers meet at one site. We pick those trees. We move on to the next, pick those trees, move on to the next, pick those trees. And then the truck would go back to the warehouse and bring all the fruit with it. The other type of glean, what I'm calling a nimble glean, because they're a little bit more versatile and able to be slightly more reactive. And this would be kind of like the gleaning that we've done in the past. So it'd be at random times throughout the week, people would be utilizing their own personal vehicles to bring the equipment and then to bring the fruit back. And it would be maybe gleaning 1 or 2 sites at a time. Most likely just one site, but every once in a while you get like 2 houses that are right next to each other that you're like, oh, may as well pick these apples too. So those are the 2 types. And the way that we're gonna be able to do these cluster gleans is using this tree map. So I have a little video. Hopefully, is that playing for you guys? There's no sound.
See it moving, but not listening to anything.
Okay, yes, I'm the narrator. I'll just narrate as it goes. So basically what it's showing here is this is real data that we have using a software program called Airtable. And it's like basically a big database that stores all of our data. And you can see me in the video clicking into different time windows. And so what I'm trying to do is get people, when they register their trees with us, then they can select when their fruit is expected to be ready. And then on our map, we can say, okay, in this 2-week window, what trees are most likely going to be ready? And then it's going to be a matter of contacting those homeowners within those 2 weeks to see if they actually are ready, and then finding those clusters that are on the map. And so here you can see like clusters of where it says like a number. Those are like a cluster of sites. And so these are like actual sites that we have. And here you'll see like September 1 through 15, or you can go July 1 through 15, what fruit is probably going to be ready. And so we'd be using this map to plan out our gleans according to when the fruit is most likely going to be ready. So how are we going to do this? A couple different volunteer positions. Some of them are kind of what we have had in the past, but slightly more defined. And then we have a couple new new volunteer positions that I will explain. So the first one is a site checker. And I also will say as we go over these, one of the questions I have at the bottom of that agenda is for you guys to think about where you see yourself fitting in. And if you want to email me your thoughts and ideas of like, oh, I see myself like wanting to do this, or I don't think I'd be good for this, but I'd be good for this. So just keep that in the back of your mind as we go along. So site checkers, they are the ones who scout out potential sites for gleans to determine if they're suitable for Kitsap Harvest to send volunteers to. In the past, we would do site checking right before we would glean to make sure the fruit was ready. But that isn't always necessary. I think it could be done with just a simple phone call to the homeowner saying, hey, is your fruit ready? Because most homeowners know when they're ready. And then as a site checker, you would be driving to that place, just checking out the area. And really what we're doing is like assessing the suitability of the place. So if it's like on a huge cliff, or the tree is falling over, or if there's dog poop in the yard or things like that, then we maybe would say, I don't know if this is the best site for us to go to. So it's things like that that you'd be looking for. And it would require filling out an online form. You just get like a link and you click it and then fill it out about the site. And that would be used later to help plan the gleans. And site checkers, it's very flexible. You pretty much be given you'd be given a list of sites that need to be checked, and then you could say, oh, I'll go check this one out. Then you'd call the homeowner and you'd arrange a time to meet them at their place. And I do like to say site checkers get to taste test the fruit. When I did site checking last year, it'd be like, oh, this fruit looks right, but let me just try it. So, you get a snack while you're volunteering. The next one is the Glean Planner, and this is a new volunteer position, and I think is really the most important part of this whole plan that we've had, or that we're developing. And they're the ones who are organizing both the cluster and the Nimble Gleans. And this would be a completely remote position. You wouldn't need to be going to any places for this. You just need access to an email and a phone. And it would require a little bit of tech savviness, but nothing too crazy. Everything would be laid out, hopefully very easy to understand. And that you would be the one looking at that map. So you would be the one being like, okay, we're going to look 2 weeks ahead. What are these sites that are looking like they're going to be ready? You'd be calling up those homeowners and then planning the Gleans accordingly. So we'd have Gleans planned out for every Saturday, and we would then be filling in those Glean sites as we go throughout the summer. So we wouldn't necessarily know where we're gleaning in a month, but we'd figure it out, 2 weeks prior, according to that map that we have. And it would definitely be working with people. So you'd have to be comfortable, calling strangers and talking to them on the phone. And yeah, I think this would be one of the more time, what's it called? It would take up the most time out of all these volunteer positions, I think. But it is hard to know, and it would be definitely something that we would want multiple people being the Glean planner, so it isn't always the same person, so they can share the workload. Moving on, the equipment wrangler. So this is another kind of new position, and this would be the person who would be driving the box truck for those cluster Gleans. And it would involve going to the warehouse, loading up the truck, driving the truck to the Glean, helping load the fruit onto the truck, and then driving it back to the warehouse. And I do say you have to be comfortable driving the box truck, but I drive it. It's not too bad. It's actually very fun. So I think if I can do it, you all can do it too. And so this one would be, you'd be committing to 5 hours on a Saturday from about 8 a.m. to 1 p.m., depending on how far you live from the warehouse and how far the Glean is from the warehouse. And you would have to be able to lift boxes of fruit. But we can always, depending on your strength capabilities, we can always load some more or less. You don't have to be able to lift a full box of fruit because they can get very heavy. And I will say about this that it does require a team of 2, because we always want 2 people in the truck driving together, just to make sure, people feel supported and nobody's left alone. So the next position is the Glean lead. And these are the people who are going to be the hosts for the cluster Glean. And so they are really the volunteers that are taking care of the other volunteers, making sure they know what's going on, kind of just being the point person for the day. And again, this would be a commitment of about like 5 hours on a Saturday. You don't need to know anything about fruit, but you would get to take a lot of fruit home. And, if you really like fruit and want to do some canning or jam or whatever, it's a fantastic opportunity. And yeah, I think sometimes I know that people feel maybe a little bit intimidated by the word like lead, but you're really you're being there just to have that little bit of extra knowledge so that people feel comfortable. And it's not hard. It's very fun. And second to last, I think, is just a basic gleaner. And so this is anybody who just goes to a Glean, whether that be a cluster glean or a nimble glean. And this is probably, you know, it's one of the more flexible positions, and we will need a lot of them for these gleans. And to be honest, there's so much support in the community. People really enjoy going out and gleaning. So I don't think it will be a problem getting these people to show up. And the last position is the experienced gleaner. And so these are the people who are going to be carrying out those nimble gleans. So they have a little bit more responsibility than the glean leads, because they are going to be the ones who are contacting the homeowner, recruiting their fellow volunteers. So, you know, if you have a friend who you're like, oh, hey, come glean with me, and then you go, the two of you, to glean a tree here or there, and then you would be responsible for getting the picked fruit back to an aggregation spot, which would be our warehouse or another drop-off location. We're kind of working on trying to get maybe a place in North Kitsap and in South Kitsap that can be our drop-off spots, that we're not having to drive. You don't have to glean in, you know, Hansville and then drive all the way back to Bremerton to drop it off. And these are very flexible. So if you're like, I'm not super excited about committing to 5 hours on a Saturday, you could, you know, be an experienced gleaner and just kind of do those faster, smaller gleans throughout the county. So I know that was a lot of information, but I just wanted to ask, how do we glean 20,000 pounds in 2024? And I think that it's definitely possible. I think that this plan can totally work. Oh, Greg, you raised your hand. Yes. What is your question?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah. What's the difference between can you hear me?
We can, a cluster glean is like on Saturdays where we have a lot of gleans in the same neighborhood. So 3 to 5 gleans on one day that we're doing as a group. And a nimble glean is like a one off next to.
Also,
Good, thank you.
the cluster, you can have 20 volunteers to, you know, which gives people a lot more opportunity to come out and participate, which is what we've heard as feedback, is there were not enough weekend gleans participate weekend, so people can turn into that know-how, because they've which they can then do with their husband or wife or with their friend or however, and they kind of do it a bit more on their own schedule as they've now talked to the homeowner and arranged something about when they're going to come harvest that fruit. But it would just then be a volunteer opportunity for 2 or 3 people on those nimble gleans, much smaller, where the clusters are meant to get many sites and get many volunteers, and it's just really a go at it. Yeah.
Thanks. And the nimble gleans then are without the truck. They just use your own car probably. Okay, good. Because for me, I'm kind of in between those. What I do is I take about a 3-mile walk every day, and then I know when the grapes and the plums and all this stuff is coming into season. I could use some help sometimes. But it's not necessarily a huge orchard usually.
Yeah, sorry, I'm back. I'm just gonna turn off my video because I'm sorry about that. But thank you, Paisley and Iyer. So yeah, Greg, I think, are you talking about the farm that you help out at?
No, I was mostly thinking about in Polsbo. I do
Okay.
a 3-mile walk, and I know all the fruit and grape tree, all the fruit vines and trees in the area and all the owners. So I
Yeah.
zoom those when I can.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. Yeah. And that's again where, yeah, you could do those Nimble Gleans and yeah, you could recruit a friend or, I mean, I don't know, Paisley, do you think we have to require that they have another person?
Oh, you want to have a second? I advise that you have a second person with you whenever you go to a homeowner's property, so there's always two of you. That way you have somebody that's alongside that can verify, no, we didn't go into the garage, or when this person spoke to me like this person's here to verify. It's just always, what is that saying about having a buddy? You were on someone else's property, you want to have a buddy. I don't want any volunteer ever put in an uncomfortable situation and then also be on their own. So yeah, for the site checks, I do those by myself, or I have done those by myself because it's kind of that check-in. But when it actually came down to doing the work, I liked having that second person there because you are working, and if you get hurt on that property, you gotta, phone a friend, a buddy that can help you out. So I like gleaning in pairs for the safety part of it. And then as for that friend or that person, Stephanie, I'm not sure what you figured out. I know that one person needs to be experienced, but then when you like recruit your friend to help you out, or for me, like my husband, does that person need to be an experienced gleaner, or do they just now need to be a volunteer registered on the point so they can sign up as my partner?
Yeah, I wasn't thinking that they would need to be an experienced gleaner necessarily.
Right, okay.
Yeah. Because the hope would be that the experienced gleaner themselves would have enough of that knowledge and have and we're also, if we're gonna do these gleaning kits, then they'll have that folder of protocols and things that are there for them.
What about follow-up for the past gleans? And probably, I don't mean to take it off track, but I'd like to follow up with the folks on the Indian Preserve and here in Poulsbo.
Mm-hmm. So what do you mean, like follow up that we would make sure we go back to them, or?
Yeah, I mean, I plan to pick them every year probably.
Mhm.
So I guess I forget what the category that I call myself then, but I would, or somebody else sync with that group and then go over, like, check out the plums at that one place that we looked at last year.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the way that it's going to work is that sites that we've gleaned in the past will definitely be on our database and in our system, and so they're going to show up on that map. And if they work to get somebody out to those during when they're ripe, then that's awesome. And we definitely value, returning back to sites that we've been to in the past and keeping that relationship up with them. So,
And ideally, past sites, the quality of the fruit, and the landscape or any hazards, you have that on record. And so it makes it a really easy site to check off and go, yeah, we're going to be back, or, oh, so yeah, returning to sites is highly favorable for a lot of reasons.
Right.
yeah. Yeah. Um, so I will just finish saying that I do think that this plan is going to definitely require organization and commitment from volunteers and leadership. That's something that sometimes is hard to find, but I think anybody can be a leader, and you just gotta like people. I think that's pretty much what it comes down to. Like people and like fruit, and then you're good to go. And then I think sharing and networking to increase volunteer turnout. So whether that be following Kitsap Harvest on Facebook, sharing it with your friends, telling people about it. That is one huge way that we get more volunteers, is just by sharing, people saying, recruiting their friend. And then increasing people who have registered fruit for their trees so that they can get on that map, and then we can have more, more trees on that map and find those clusters that are going to be ready.